on this episode of Game. It's time for some vroom vroom as the Fraggot plays driver in this year's hottest racing extravaganza. We hang around some free-to-play friends as we showcase some of this week's best titles online and otherwise. And with the holidays soon approaching, we check in with some smashing titles coming soon to a console near you. All that and more in the next half an hour. This is Game. Hey guys, and welcome to your favorite video game candy store, Game. Awesome episode this week as we look through some of the best digital treats sure to satisfy that sweet tooth of yours. I'm Kelly Latimer, and for the next half an hour I do solemnly swear to bring you only the best that the world of video games has to offer. Scout's Honor. So let's get to it. First off, it's review time again as Fraggy gets cozy in his bucket seat, burning some rubber with the latest racing sensation to hit the consoles. The latest game in a series which has been turning gaming geeks into petrol heads since it first hit the scene back in 2005. The Italian word meaning force or strength. Let's see what our resident game guru thought of this year's release of Forza 4.
Lovers of speed, devotees of power, performance and noise. There is a safe haven, the last bastion of automotive lust. And it's right there in your living room.
Thanks, Kelly. Yep, for the last week or so, it's been one high-speed turn after another as I took to Microsoft's latest four-wheeled sensation. Now, if you're a racing fan, you probably need no introduction to the series, which has been at the forefront of video game races since it first appeared on the original Xbox about 7 years ago. Originally billed as Microsoft's answer to the Gran Turismo series, which is exclusive to the PlayStation, Forza has slowly been gaining recognition as the console racer of choice. And with Forza 4, they're looking to compete head-on with Sony's Gran Turismo 5. So first off, if you've played the previous iterations of Forza, Part 4 does on the surface bear a striking resemblance. But under the hood, developers Turn 10 have promised plenty of changes, including an increase in the number of vehicles on the track, new modes, as well as an all-new lighting engine, all which aim to make the game even more realistic. Now that alone will probably be enough to have all the petrol heads among us go right out and grab a copy. But what about if you're more of a Gears of War fan than a Gearbox fan? Does Forza 4 still have enough crammed in to warrant a purchase? Well, let's find out. Now, if you're a bit of a graphics junkie, the first thing you'll probably notice when you boot this one up are the graphics, which look nothing short of amazing. Staring down in open straight to the sun, just kissing the horizon, is a sight to behold on each of the game's 26 circuits. And when it comes to cars, Forza 4 has got 'em in spades, with over 500 models from over 80 different manufacturers. Now, unlike GT5, each of these beauties come with fully modeled interiors, so you've got a great cockpit view for each and every one of your rides. But to truly appreciate your babies, it's off to the new Auto Vista mode, which works like a sort of red light peep show for car fanatics. Now sadly, only 24 cars in the game will support this feature, but nonetheless, it's a great way to get up close and personal with some sweet rides that I can only dream of owning in real life. And finally, if you're a fan of the Top Gear series, then you're in for a real treat this year with heavy integration of the television show in this year's game.
Welcome to the Top Gear Challenge. Now, the idea here...
Right off the bat, with an intro narrated by Jeremy Clarkson himself, the Top Gear presence is a nice addition, and aside from rounds on the test track, there's Top Gear car bowling, and even a round of football, which is an awesome distraction to the mostly serious racing that you'll be doing. Now, unfortunately for all the spit, shine and polish in this year's release, Forza 4 does come with its annoyances. First off, while I love the improvements to the community multiplayer hub, which do make it easier to find a game that you like, waiting to fill a lobby is still sometimes a 10-minute affair. And when you do get in a game, the multiplayer netcode does leave a lot to be desired, with cars not reacting at all like you'd imagine, especially during collisions. Also, do note that because of the new lighting engine, which does make things look a whole lot nicer in the day, the team had to sacrifice things like night racing and weather. And even though it's easy to forget their omission, when things look this good, one quick look at a game like F1 2011 and you'll see just how much changes in weather can affect a racing game, something that Forza 4 is sadly lacking in. In the end though, Forza 4 is still an amazing game to look at, and more importantly, a bloody great racing sim to play. It's a real love letter to the sport of motor racing, and thanks to some of the additions and improvements to help some of the more casual fans, also some of the most fun racing that you can have on a console. However, do note that Forza games have always been more focused on production line cars and supercars, so don't expect things like kart racing, rally racing, or any of the top tier stuff. What it is, however, is probably the best hardcore racing simulation out there, brimming with an overflowing passion and love for cars that's pretty rare outside of this franchise. And if you're the kind of guy that thinks about a hot ride more often than a hot date, probably a game for you to check out.
Forza, looking good if I do say so myself. So if you're looking for some white-knuckled racing excitement, Forza 4 is available right now exclusively on the Xbox 360. Nothing like the roar of a good engine to get me all tingly. Phew, getting a little bit hot and flustered there, so I think it's time to head off for a commercial break, but don't move a muscle, because when we return, it's a weekly smorgasbord of free-to-play treats. Great games at no money. Who'd have thunk it? And we pick apart some of this week's best game demos, looking for the perfect line. All that and more, don't go anywhere. Lovelies, and welcome back to Game. Kelly here, your resident pixel pusher. Now, how about a little treat to start this segment? Now, each week, our crack team of video game investigators trawl the depth of the internet to bring you only the best in digital entertainment. Free to play and brought to you with a huge helping of love, or showing us that sometimes the best things in life are free. This is Online.
First up on this week's edition of Online Freebies. Time to cut the slack as we hang around with a couple of ragdolls in the world of Hangar 2. A game all about swinging from one point to another, making your Tarzan adventure all the more complex are the numerous obstacles along the way. And going that extra mile, not only do these structures get in your way, but they also do a good job dismembering our little hometown hero. Lose a limb and it's points down the drain. Like an inebriated Spider-Man going about his day-to-day, manage your momentum and make it to the end, hopefully all in one piece. Next up, we check in with a rather strange game all about the mundane world of office spreadsheets. in Exit. The objective is to get the cursor, the plus sign, to the exit on the spreadsheet. It may sound all easy peasy, but the tricky part about it are the black boxes on the page which act as a sort of guide, allowing you to move in only a few select directions. A game all about logic and planning, the action starts out simple, but soon you're dealing with some huge sheets with things like teleportation portals and even boosters. My. So if you're looking for a game you can't disguise while you're busy at work, Exit is available by following the link below. And finally, closing up this edition of Online, time to head to the labs and get all sciencey in Phage Wars 2. An interesting strategy game which is presented as a science experiment. Discover and give an analysis on a new species of gene. Now the aim of this game is to occupy and control as many cells as you can, all the while keeping up the body's defenses in a high-speed game of human risk. And what makes this even more appealing is the presentation, with a nice post-game analysis of the stage and a pretty solid story. So if you can't wait to get your hands on some of this, make sure you wash them at least before you enter the labs of Phage Wars 2 at the link below.
Some great titles there, and if you've been watching the show a while, definitely some awesome additions to add to your bookmarks. And of course, remember, if you'd like to share some of your personal secret finds with the world, why not drop us a message on our Facebook page at facebook.com/ESSGame. It's also a great place to go if you're stuck on a game or just want to chat with any of us here on the show. Righto, moving swiftly along, time now to check in with some of the best demos released this week. Yes, and this week it's a case of yin and yang, as we showcase two very different titles with one common trait. They're both awesome to play, so sit tight as we check in with the Demo Derby.
In this week's edition of the Derby, it's high velocity overtaking on the menu as we go on the run with the latest chapter in the Need for Speed franchise. Based around a character named Jack, the run is all about a chase from San Francisco to New York with $25 million on the line. Win the cross-country race and the money's yours to keep. Featuring 2 levels from the full game, tear through the dusty Nevada highways on an overtaking mission, or take to the snowy mountain passes of Colorado in a race against an oncoming avalanche. Only problem is the used Fiat Panda they give you at the start. Only joking, it's a brand new Lamborghini Valentino Balboni, so no problem there. What does make this a little harder, however, are some of the cars you'll be up against. Porsche 911s, Chevy Camaros, and even an Audi R8 to name a few. Built using an all-new control system which focuses on the fun aspects of driving rather than realism, the run is arcade-styled racing at its best. So if you're fed up with all your racing games taking their telemetry data a little too seriously, the demo for Need for Speed, The Run, is an easy way to keep you occupied until the full game hits the shelves in November. And moving on, to close out this week's edition of the best demos, time to visit an interesting little arcade title which has been drawing a lot of attention. In Lightfish, the player controls a tiny little fish who lives in the murky depths of the ocean. Hard life down there, surrounded by deadly sea creatures. However, there is a way out. The Lightfish has the ability to draw lines into unexplored territories, which instantly kills anything in the region. So, draw away and aid our friend in conquering the chilling depths of the underwater world. But be careful, because touch an enemy and it's bye-bye Lightfish. A classic arcade concept evolved. Grab a pair of flippers and dive into the world of the Lightfish at the link below.
Now, don't know about you, but I think I remember playing a slightly naughty version of Lightfish at an arcade when I was just a little younger. Anyways, good to see that the concept is still going strong. It's a great puzzle game with an excellent use of risk and reward. Definitely want to check out if you're into puzzlers. Okie doke, time for a quick commercial interjection. But don't go anywhere because when we return, we talk to some friends behind one of this year's more surprising video game hits. And it's Yo Ho Ho and Where Are My Bloody Presents? We take a gander at some of the heavy hitters that you'll be seeing in the months to come. All that and more only on Asia's favorite video game show, You're Watching Game. Thanks for sticking around, guys. You're tuned in to Game with me, Kelly. Right then, hope you're all geared up as we head into the final stretch of the show. Time now for a little look forward as we take a peek at some of the more interesting titles as we peer over the gaming holiday horizon. Let's see, what to start with. We've got a remake of an 80s icon, a battle in post-apocalyptic Dubai, or the latest shots from one of the most highly anticipated role-playing games set to release next year. It's all up next, only on The Preview.
Flying into the danger zone on this edition of The Preview. It's a retro revival in the shape of an F-14 Tomcat as we turn Maverick with the boys of Top Gun: Hard Lock. A sort of reimagining of Tom Cruise's 80s classic follow a batch of elite naval aviators as they graduate from Top Gun Academy. Featuring something they're calling Hard Lock mode, which allows for specific combat maneuvers and all-round flashy action, this tribute will also feature some old fighters like MiGs and F-14s, despite being set in the present day. Now, visually, this one's pretty rough around the edges, and on the video game tie-in timeline, also about 25 years too late, but hey, your perfect aerial bromance might be just around the corner. Top Gun: Hard Lock is set for release early next year. Moving on, we pay a visit to the fantasy world of Tyria, following the progress of one of multiplayer online gaming's most anticipated titles, Guild Wars 2. Going against the grain of many of today's MMORPGs, which are often big on content but light on immersion, Guild Wars 2 is unique in that it actually features a storyline that responds to the player's actions. Featuring a newly minted combat system which aims to be more dynamic than ever, the focus this time around is on how the many different professions work together, and also using the environment as a weapon. But I think most importantly, as a true sequel, Part 2 will also not come with a monthly subscription fee. Great news for those of us who are sick of paying for our online accounts. And last but not least, our final game in this week's preview is a fresh take on modern military shooters. First announced in 2010, these are the latest shots from Spec Ops: The Line. Now, generally when a new title gets announced, developers promise the usual slew of improved additions such as unparalleled gameplay, stunning graphics, and a great multiplayer experience. This time, however, the guys over at Jaeger Development had other things on their minds, promising a fresh setting and dynamic environments which make the best use of terrain changes that highly influence the course of any firefight. Also included is a multiplayer mode showcasing unusual situations and environments which expand on the single-player campaign. Take all this and base it around what the developers are calling the biggest addition, unimaginable choices affecting human life, and you've got quite the title to look forward to. Unfortunately, the release date hasn't been confirmed yet, but we'll be sure to keep you up to date on the progress of this bad boy.
Whoa, it kind of does make you wonder what would happen if Dubai ever got engulfed by sandstorms. A billion-dollar city for the world's richest turned playground for the world's most cutthroat outlaws. Spec Ops: The Line sure is one to look out for. Now, moving on, time now to take a look at the inner workings behind one of this month's most surprising releases. Orcs Must Die was a definite triumph for the guys over at Robot Entertainment when it was released earlier this month for both the Xbox and PC. A cunning mix of both tower defense and third-person shooting, we caught up with the game's producers to find out a little more about what else makes this monster masher tick.
Orcs Must Die is an important game for Robot Entertainment. It's our first original IP as a studio. Now, we have a long background of doing big RTS games like Age of Empires and Halo Wars, but to be able to work on a small game like this, about a year with a fairly small team, and bring out something unique with a lot of humor and a unique visual style has been really fun for the studio and sets us up to do some really cool projects in the future.
We had talked about games that we've been playing ourselves lately. We've been playing a bunch of horde mode games, a bunch of tower defense games. And one of us had the idea, what if we tried to put those together? What if we brought the player down low inside of a tower defense game? You've got a level, and there's a beginning and an end to the level, and a series of enemies try to get from one side. And your job is to stop them any way that you can.
The game is really a mix of action and strategy, and the traps are a huge part of the game. We really designed the game with the intent that you wouldn't be able to win with just weapons or traps. You have to use a combination of both.
Obviously, traps are a huge part of the game. How much should you be dependent upon traps? How much should you be dependent on running around as a player inside of that world? We're moving this game more into putting you down inside of the traps that you've placed. So you're both building the mousetrap and running around inside of the mousetrap.
You get to set up this defensive array of weapons to thin out the horde before they get to you and you fight them. Some of the traps we've got are things like blades that come out of the walls. We've got spikes in the floor. We've got big pushing traps that'll push guys into pits of acid. We've got flip traps that fling them through the air, and there's all kinds of things like exploding barrel you can use to blow them into pieces. And there's a lot of really fun ways to make a big mess.
We would do a lot of play tests where we would play just with traps to see if you could beat it without ever having to do combat, and just with combat to see if you could beat it without ever having to do traps. And either one of those was a failure case to us.
One of my favorite traps isn't necessarily one of the finesse kind of traps. The wall blades, where they're stationed inside the wall, and as soon as somebody comes by, they just come flinging out, spinning and doing a lot of damage.
As the War Mage works his way through the game, he unlocks a series of spells, including things like fire bracers that let him cast fireballs, walls of flame. He unlocks ice spells, which let him shoot hellbats out of the sky and freeze enemies as they're coming. So it's a pretty wide selection of stuff.
The Weavers were an interesting thing, especially from the art side. Some of the aspirations for what the Weavers wanted to be were quite grand at first. We wanted these empty rooms that were going to transform. We had like little gnomes kind of like making the traps. We had this actual forge that would show up and things like that. It really ended up being the clearest to just have a UI element, show the tech tree, and let the players go through there.
I like the Knowledge Weaver the best. She has a lot of really interesting off-kilter stuff. She has abilities that give the Rift the ability to fight back a little bit against the orcs, let the player summon up zombie orcs from the remains of dead orcs that he's killed.
The enemies of Orcs Must Die were actually where we started. It's hard to focus on the main character when you're beginning the development on the art side. But from the enemies, you know that you want these bad guys, and it's always a little easier to show people what bad is, because everybody's got their own kind of opinion of what's good. We started with the orcs, we started with the ogres, and they just started to take on a life of their own. We had 6 to 9 different orcs. But every one of them looks like one that you just want to punch in the face, so it just all worked out.
It's called Orcs Must Die, but there's a lot more than orcs in there. We've got things like little kobold runners that are a total pain in the butt, and they run past you and sneak by. We've got huge ogres that'll come lumbering through the level, and if they catch you, they can be really difficult because they stun you. And we've got little flying units. We've got these hellbats that come in and they breathe fire on you, and their little wings are flapping all creepy.
The Hunter's probably one of our favorite units from the art side. There's something cold and calculated about the hunter. He's the edge of the bad guys. Just one of those things when you're doing visual development and exploring some ideas, the ideas never stop with him. It was, oh, let's have him leap over, barriers. Let's have him howl as soon as he comes in. Let's have him stealth and come up from behind the player. We want him to be the hunter. We want you to be the prey. And as soon as you hear that howl, you kind of get that, what's coming?
Setting traps and taking names like any good war mage as he helps maintain order in the castle. An extremely addictive game if you're into strategy at the end of a blade. Orcs Must Die is out right now. On that happy note, this is unfortunately where I have to love you and leave you. We're taking a little break next week, but we'll be back in just a fortnight with all the great gaming action you love. For treatment of withdrawal symptoms, pop along to our Facebook page over at facebook.com/ESSGame, where you can always keep up with the buzz surrounding the show, as well as talk to a whole host of like-minded gamers. Or follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/ESSGame. Till we see each other again, guys, keep those thumbs twiddling. Bye-bye.